Good morning, Pittsburgh. I'm Abby Maloney, President and CEO of Capital Analytics. Welcome to the launch of our inaugural Invest Pittsburgh 2022 report, an in-depth analysis of what makes the greater Pittsburgh region tick, where are the opportunities, and what challenges lie ahead. Thank you all for being here today. In doing the initial research for our report, we already knew that what Pittsburgh had been. An industrial steel town that had fallen on hard times as manufacturing went to Asia decades ago. We also knew that the region was enjoying a rebirth, emerging from its industrial roots to forge a new economy based on technology, finance, education, healthcare, and other advanced economic segments. Its success in reimagining itself has grabbed the attention of businesses both globally and regionally, and was among the reasons why we wanted to shine a light and bring its substance into greater focus. What our interviews and analysis have demonstrated is the breadth of economic activity taking place in this now booming region. The stark contrast of the economy compared to decades ago is reflected in our panels today. We'll be discussing education, Pittsburgh's leading efforts in sustainability and the green economy, as well as the future of finance. These are all representative of the new trends in a rejuvenated region that has weathered the pandemic storm to emerge a leader on the national economic stage. Of course, there are also challenges. We all know very clearly that diversity, equity, and inclusion are integral components of any company or organization, and many are moving to ensure that they're on the inside of this issue rather than on the outside looking in. This pandemic has also disrupted supply chains, with one result being inflation that remains a threat on the horizon. It has also created a debilitating labor shortage that we are all contending with. This is also a reason why workforce development is among the region's top priorities. But when we look at the overall picture of greater Pittsburgh, what we see is a great deal of optimism. At this time of change, we are now mostly accustomed to living with COVID, but it's particularly important to look ahead, leaning on the lessons that we learned over the past 2 years. At Capital Analytics, like so many other businesses, we saw the pandemic as an opportunity to change things up. Business intelligence is now more vital than ever, whether it's print, digital, or virtual conferences like these. First, we expanded our talented team at Capital Analytics and have entered into 11 new markets: Pittsburgh, Nashville, Minneapolis-St. Paul, Raleigh-Durham, San Antonio, Dallas, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, and North and Central Jersey, bringing our economic reporting library to just under 20 metro areas. Next, our Invest Insights platform has exploded. We brought our network of high-level CEOs in front of the camera to share with our audience their views and advice on everything from creativity in light of a pandemic, cryptocurrency and NFTs, and the long-term effect on banking norms, the great resignation, and retaining and attracting talent, and so much more. We will be filming season 5 in March, and over the past 4 seasons, we found that our partners, like yourself, want to participate, want a community connection, and want to get the message out that the world marches on. We expanded that video platform to a podcast so that our readers and viewers can listen to our informative content on the go. So as you can see, the key for us, as with many of you joining today, has been the ability to transform and reinvent. Today, Pittsburgh stands as a leading example of reinvention. It makes me believe that anything is possible. We have quite a lineup for you today. However, before the discussions begin, I'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsors for today's event. Our gold sponsors, Clarion University of Pennsylvania, First Commonwealth Bank, Seton Hill University, Slippery Rock University. Our silver sponsors, Fragasso Financial Advisors, Penn State Greater Allegheny, Pittsburgh Technical College, Westbanco, WGL Energy. Our bronze sponsors, Architectural Innovations, Peoples, and Sherrard, German, and Kelly, and our honored sponsors, Mid-Atlantic Eurasia Business Council. Thank you. It is with your support that we can continue to bring high-level speakers and content to Greater Pittsburgh. I'd also like to recognize the team who worked tirelessly on this year's report. Josh Greenberg and Joey Guerin, kudos, a job well done. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our opening keynote, the new mayor of Pittsburgh, Ed Gainey. Mayor Gainey, please turn on your video and your audio. You guys see him coming in? Just need a little Video starting. There we go. And Mayor Gainey, can I hear you?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Excellent. I hear you loud and clear. Thank you for being here this morning.
Yeah, what a great introduction you did. I appreciate the things that you said.
I'll hand it over to you. Thank you again.
I begin. Thank you. I want to thank the team at Invest Pittsburgh for inviting me to speak today and to choosing to highlight our great city of Pittsburgh. The city of Pittsburgh holds tremendous economic opportunity. In fact, in my inaugural address, I made a promise to the people of Pittsburgh that we would build a city where all people have economic opportunity and abundance for everyone in this city to be prepared to lead into the future. I lived in Pittsburgh my whole life, born and raised, and I can stand here and tell you today of the list of things that makes our city remarkable, a great place to live and to do business. But the truth is our greatest asset is our people. Pittsburgh is home to more of the nation's most talented artists, entrepreneurs, and change makers. It is why we are leading in technology, specifically in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, energy, life science, health, manufacturing, robotics. But more importantly, it's just the incredible story that we had. A story of steel into a new economy, a city of transformation and never giving up, and continue to build. It's a story that we must continue to tell the world why this is a place to do business. So if you're looking to launch a business, there's no better city than Pittsburgh. You'll be able to take advantage of our deep talent pool, which includes 44,000 graduates from our world-class university system. We're also home to 15,000 acres of public parks and green space and world-class architecture. In addition, with more than 32 museums, 30 concert venues, and 19 public libraries, our arts community rivals any other major metropolitan city. Make no mistake, we intend to build a city where the most innovative companies can thrive and where our diverse, dynamic population prospers. I've only been in office for a little more than a month, but we've already begun to make strides in creating a Pittsburgh for all. My administration is convening a table of community groups, innovative growth sector job creators, Pittsburgh public schools, and organized labor to ensure that we are preparing everyone for the jobs of tomorrow. Rather than an ad hoc approach to workforce development that's different on every major project, I am committed to working with our regional workforce development agencies to create a coordinated plan that provides workers with long-term employment opportunities and trains the workforce that is growing the sector that needs to be successful. I always say that our workforce development programs, it's not that we give them a nice shiny award at the end of the program, but that we give them a reward by making sure that they have job opportunities so that they go directly to work. We will be working to create new business opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses and establishing our own certification program to allow more of these businesses to become certified. We will support and enhance our city's economic development efforts to continue ensuring the growth of strong job creation and creating conditions for small businesses to thrive. We will ensure that Pittsburgh is a leader in transportation by investing in projects in conjunction with Port Authority, our county exec Rich Fitzgerald, and Penn that includes multimodal transit options, walkability, technology, and connectivity. We must realize our downtown to build better back is in the wake of a lingering pandemic of COVID. In Pittsburgh, we eat, play where we live. This is why we have so many incredible business corridors from Oakland to Southside, from East End to East Ohio. We must focus on developing downtown and sustainable and thriving neighborhoods by converting office space into affordable housing projects. We are fifth when it comes to commercial space. We know that we need to change this market and create a downtown that is a neighborhood where everybody wants to be. And so we will build the foundation for the next generation of Pittsburghers by investing in policies that create sustained investments in literacy, career and workforce development, civic infrastructure, and housing options. Most importantly, we will prioritize leveraging the city's planning process to ensure that inclusionary zoning and affordability are at the heart of the development in our city. We will work together to create a city that works for everyone and where everyone has a seat at the table with an equity lens so that we continue to make our workforce diverse. And I am confident that if we remain committed to these goals, we will drive our city's population and growth. We will work together to create a city that works for everyone and where everyone feels like they can gain, learn, and have opportunity to succeed in this region. But we can only do it together. And that's the greatest opportunity that we have. If you're looking to start a business, there's no other place but the city of Pittsburgh. Come on and join us, and let's go get it and help us build a city for all. Welcome to the city. Have a great, great day, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Allegheny. Thank you for those words and that inspiration for all the people that are joining the room today. By the way, we already have 230 people attending at this time, the launch conference. So thank you for that. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Mayor Allegheny again for being with us live today and for your introductory remarks for our first annual Invest Pittsburgh Launch Conference 2022. It's really a true pleasure and an honor to have the Mayor of the City of Pittsburgh laying out the principles of his economic vision for the city here today at our Leadership Summit, along with numerous investment opportunities that it has to offer on the local, regional, national, and international level. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Juan Clark, and I'm the Capital Analytics Regional Director, overseeing the company's continued expansion in the North region. After 3 years of invest in Philadelphia, our natural expansion had to be obviously in the state of Pennsylvania, had to be Pittsburgh, an expansive market that continues to show its strength in industries such as financial services, healthcare, technology and innovation, education, manufacturing, and energy sectors, just to name a few. We have quite a program for you today. So I'm going to share with you a quick notes to point out. For example, all registered attendees are going to receive complimentary access to read our Invest Pittsburgh 2022 report digitally, and an email, and it will come probably from me, will be sent early next week. We're also currently live streaming, as you very well know, the event on our YouTube page. And it'll be there for anyone that would like to revisit today's event, or if you want to share this great discussions. In between each panel, we're doing something new. We're going to be conducting polls to take the temperature of the room on some developments and plans for your companies this year. You will see the first one popping up very soon on your screens right now. Which of the following developments are you most excited about? First question, first answer, F&B Financial Center in Lower Hill redevelopment. Number 2, Esplanade, or number 3, the Terminal Modernization Program at Pittsburgh International Airport. So go ahead and share your thoughts here at Invest Pittsburgh Launch Conference 2022. I think it's also a great moment in the meantime, while you're participating on the poll, to thank you once again, all of events sponsors, as without you, none of this would be possible. Thank you for that. Now it's with pleasure that I want to introduce our first panel, Innovation in Education, how education will continue to evolve in an uncertain environment. Presenting the panel is Alicia Harvey-Smith, President of Pittsburgh Technical College. Alicia, if you could please turn on your camera and unmute yourself so you can go ahead and introduce the panel moderator and panelists.
Greetings to our Invest Pittsburgh panelists, esteemed colleagues, and everyone watching today. I'm Dr. Alicia Harvey-Smith, the President and CEO of Pittsburgh Technical College, and I am honored to be a part of today's virtual launch event and to share some information about Pittsburgh Technical College. PTC is a private 2-year regionally accredited nonprofit college located on a beautiful 185-acre campus in Oakdale, Pennsylvania. This year, we're celebrating our 75th anniversary of offering world-class applied and technical education in the Pittsburgh region. PTC has 10 academic schools with a highly recognized School of Trades and 30 competitive programs ranging from certificates, associate degrees to bachelor's degrees. 100% of our students engage in internships, career capstones, or affiliation experiences in specialized internships, and 95% of them are placed within their selected fields of study upon graduation. I am very excited to share that Pittsburgh Technical College was recently recognized by the Pittsburgh Technology Council as the Innovator of the Year in Nonprofit Education. Like many of my colleagues, today's topic, innovation in education, how education will continue to evolve in an uncertain environment, drives and shapes PTC's thinking and strategies every single day. And as each of our institutions continue to respond to the many challenges emerging because of the pandemic, these conversations will be pivotal to igniting and sustaining innovation. Today's conversation is especially pertinent as we recognize the incredible need for innovation during challenging and uncertain times. As we reflect on our work and how our work has changed, and what we'll continue to confront as educational institutions, as educational providers, as employers, and simply as professionals who love what we do, who are passionate about building strong, thriving communities, and who want to see our students succeed. Innovation will be the key to our success. COVID has forced us to rethink every facet of the academic and student experience. Over the past 2 years, our institutions have delivered the best possible education and collegiate experience on campus, online, and in hybrid modalities. We have addressed the concerns of students who wanted to be on campus full-time, immersed in their programs, and who crave the enrichment and connections of campus life, just like what many of us experienced. We have galvanized around new strategies to address enrollment declines, reaffirm the value of education, which is becoming, to many, a more expensive and riskier proposition, particularly during uncertain times. But I remain an eternal optimist, living and working in a thriving region with a world of opportunity and superb educational institutions that know to survive is to evolve. PTC has been ranked by US News and World Report as one of the best colleges in the Northern region. We've made significant strides creating strategic partnerships with business, government, community leaders, and other higher education institutions to expand our reach. As one example, we've launched the Pittsburgh Technical Corporate College to help industry educate their workforce on new technology and methodologies, to not work harder, but smarter and better, and to improve morale and boost retention too. We're partnering with Tenaris USA to provide over 500 employees with electrical and mechanical training, and Catalyst Connection to offer first-class welding courses to 40 of their employees. PTC was awarded 3 National Science Foundation grants, totaling $1.5 million, with significant scholarships to elevate our STEM and trades programs to best in class, further expanding the reach of a PTC education. Currently, we're the only college in Southwest Pennsylvania to receive 3 National Science Foundation awards. We've had to do more than just plan. We've implemented, we've innovated, we've diversified revenue streams, and we've invested in new technology, like our impressive IT and CAD labs. And like you, we have more work to do. Events like today will further help us to formulate new ideas to tackle the challenges that are before us and that will remain for some time to come. These challenges are not insurmountable. Together, our institutions and businesses represent the transformational power of education. We shape the professionals of tomorrow, and we transform families and communities as our students go on to do amazing things to make us all proud. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce my esteemed colleague, Dr. Kathy Humphrey, president of Carlow University, who will lead us in a deeper discussion. Thank you.
Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be with you this morning in our first panel, which is entitled Innovation in Education, How Education Will Continue to Evolve in an Uncertain Environment. I am so pleased to be joined by some of the top education leaders in our community. So joining us today is Dr. William Berry, who is the president of Slippery Rock University, Dr. Mary Finger, who is the president of Seton Hill University, who I just met last week. Good to see you, Mary. Dr. Dale Elizabeth Pearson, who serves as the president of Clarion University, And lastly, Dr. Jacqueline Edmondson, who is the Chancellor of Penn State Greater Allegheny. Welcome everyone to the panel. I'm glad to have you here. So without further delay, let's begin. We only have a very short time to be together. So we'll try to get as many of these questions answered as we can. And so I'm going to throw the first question out to the group. And that first question is this. After 2 years of dealing with the fallout of COVID-19 and now armed with a number of different vaccines and therapeutics, how is the post-pandemic landscape beginning to look for Pittsburgh's higher education sector? Why don't you start us off, Dr. Edmondson?
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Humphrey. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I think, first of all, it really has been a challenging time for faculty, staff, and students. I don't think anyone would deny that. But we've also learned a great deal about what our priorities and our needs are. And we've learned that we can really be nimble and flexible as we work to help students reach their educational goals, in spite of the reputation of institutions of higher education being something other than nimble and flexible. So for example, we have Zoom advising and tutoring. We have remote counseling now. There's student programming that we're sharing across campuses and across institutions. We have remote community outreach, and that's changing the landscape of who we can reach and how we reach them. And I think we'll also be challenging longstanding practices in higher ed, like whether the ACT and SAT tests are required. I think, too, we're going to see sort of a longstanding impact from our campus community. I, for example, think students now are really health conscious, and some of the things that we instituted during the pandemic are likely to remain. Some of the safety and sanitation practices, having food apps so that students can order food ahead in the cafe and don't have to stand in line. And so it is going to be really interesting to see how all of these things evolve, and some things will stay with us for long term for very good reason.
Absolutely.
I would just like to add that I think one of the things that we've all learned, as Dr. Edmondson said, is the ability to be flexible, the need for technology in a very comprehensive manner, so that we are dealing with students who and faculty and staff who are completely prepared. I think our institutions have done a tremendous job at that. I know here at Seton Hill, we're an Apple Distinguished School, so when we went remote, everyone had the technology required, and we've done a tremendous amount of training and education for our faculty and staff. And I think it's really about, again, as Dr. Edmondson said, focusing on the student and what's the best methodology, what is the need. And I think the other thing that we've really learned is that they really need community. We all really need community. And so it's creating community in different ways. And so I think we've learned a lot from, and we're going to continue to learn a lot, but being responsive and nimble is key to everything.
I'll just add, I think that we're seeing a shift actually in what students desire. At Slippery Rock, students still want a primarily face-to-face experience, a primarily face-to-face overall program, but they do want some online options more than we anticipated. They got used to the convenience of being able to take their course at midnight because they had to work during the day and things like that. So while I don't see a massive shift at the large program level for Slippery Rock, for example, to go with lots and lots of fully online undergraduate programs, I do see a shift with more course sections here and there, so students can choose their modality. And I think faculty have learned that the benefits of certain online components to their courses. So I think you're going to see a greater hybridization of traditional face-to-face courses with some flipped classrooms and things like that. And of course, we've really lost the snow day forever because it snows and you go online. And I sort of feel bad for folks for that, but that's something that's gone.
It really is our new reality. There's no need to have another snow day. And I say yay to that. I don't know about you all, but I think that's a great part of our new reality. Let's stay there for a second. And let's talk about the flexibility of our classrooms and what we've learned with this flexibility and our ability to be agile. Some of you have talked about already as well. But I know when we returned on ground, I said to the students as I was walking around our campus, are you happy to be back in class? And resoundingly, they all said, yes, we are so happy. One young woman said, I'm just happy to hear the noise around me. So I do think that we will always have the need to have in person and that connection. But let's talk about that. What are you hearing out there in regards to the flexibility of this hybrid notion that really came to the forefront for residential campuses during COVID?
I can talk about that a little bit. At Clarion, we are taking our lead from our students, but also I supervise Edinburgh and Cal University campuses, which are predominantly traditional in their framework. But our students have told us, yeah, we like the face-to-face. We love being together. We love that sense of community, but we want many other options now. And now that we've had them for the last 1.5 to 2 years, we want to make decisions that are a little bit more tailored to our career trajectory and our choices. So I think that's the pathway going forward. We are at Penn West University, which launches in 4 months. We will combine all 3 campuses. 1/3 of our student population are not traditional students. So they've been asking in that space for a long time. We want to be able, we're land bound, we're place bound, job bound. We've got all of these obligations. So for us, coming to campus sometimes is a wonderful treat. And we want the option to have what's best going on in the classroom delivered to our home. And so that's what the demand is of the future. And I think we have an obligation to provide it.
I would agree with all the things that were just said, but I also think the faculty experiences and the staff experiences have been really interesting within this context as well. We know at Penn State that we've been able to offer shared programs, and we've done that for a long time. We have well-established faculty communities that work across locations to offer degrees, like our business degree. But during the pandemic, we realized that we could offer other kinds of programs collaboratively as well, like our Summer Start program. So we really have seen how we can fully leverage faculty and staff talent from across the Commonwealth to bring new opportunities to this region. So for example, we started to offer a biobehavioral health degree, cybersecurity, Rex Park and tourism management, other degree programs that are part of a consortium or shared model within the Commonwealth. And that allows us to have faculty teaching from different locations to students here at Penn State Greater Allegheny in McKeesport. So it's no longer the case that we need faculty to be in close geographic proximity where they might drive from one campus to another to teach if they have assignments at more than one location. But we really can leverage the technology and the tools we have to facilitate just a broader range of degree offerings for our students.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually seen a similar phenomenon with alumni mentoring. We always had to work at a bit of a distance because not all of our alumni live nearby, but the Zoom environment has allowed, it's normalized it, I guess is a way to say it. So our alumni are engaging with our students and our campus in different ways. And we're in the winter season, so for many of us, it's time for the Florida tour. But we're not doing it the same way this year. In fact, I won't be going to Florida this year, at least not right now, maybe later in the season. But we're doing much more online engagement with alumni and then linking them with our current students and making a really wonderful continual experience.
Dr. Berry, let's stay there for a second. So this whole notion of online, we have pivoted. We understand how to move to the virtual environment, but let's talk about the student experience in the virtual environment. And what are you doing to really enhance that experience so that students feel still connected to the campus?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And all of our adult degree programs have been online for a while now. But I think what the other things, and so we do a lot of interconnection in terms of shared experience, Zoom experiences for whether it's book clubs or whether it is other kinds of activities that we've whether sometimes we do karaoke nights by Zoom. I mean which is an interesting experience. So I mean I think that what we've tried to do is make sure that even though you're not on campus, you have the connection to campus. You know a little bit about the campus, and you certainly know a lot about its history and its mission. I do think, though, one of the things that we're going to see long term is more low residency programs. I mean, I think that this combination of Zoom distance learning as well as low residency programs on campus. We have a master's degree in writing popular fiction that we do low residency. And I think what a lot of the research is indicating that hybrid is a really, really interesting way to learn. People really like it. They like the flexibility, but they also like the connection. So I think all of us are thinking about how do you make those connections, and you do it through programming, you do it through outreach, you do it through orientation. But you also, I think it's people really do like to get back to campus if they can, even for a short period of time.
So building on what Mary just said and what Bill said, we've also got what the student expectation is going forward. They gave us a lot of grace with, okay, we pivoted, it was a crisis, there's a pandemic, and we're doing the best to all deliver our mission. But going forward, they will expect the best. And that's, I think, one of the biggest differences, finding how to integrate the hybrid, the technology with the residential and the traditional programs, but also teaching that's not jerky in the sense that, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. It's got to be seamless and really be focused on the learner's needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I'll risk speaking for everyone here is I think we're all investing an awful lot in faculty professional development to make sure that that's occurring through different structures on our campuses and really getting folks, there's the technical training, how do you use the equipment, but there's also the conceptual training is how is education changed in this environment, particularly if you move to an asynchronous environment, what has to be done in a different fashion, and good professors can adapt, but they need to be given the tools to adapt, and I think they're doing that. But to go back to the question that you began with around how do you get that connection? I think Mary described and really well the struggles sometimes with fully online programs or mostly online programs. I think for Slippery Rock, as a predominantly undergraduate face-to-face school, one of the things we have to think about is our students want to be on campus. They've made that connection. Most of them are taking many, if not the majority of their classes face-to-face. And it's how do you make that online course robust enough and meaningful enough that it's as hard, it's as engaging, and it's as thought-provoking as the seminar they go to the next day. And that's the challenge we put in front of our faculty every day. And many of them pick it up and do a fantastic job with it if we give them the training.
Yeah, I would just like to add that's absolutely true. I mean, before we even went. Before Seton Hill even went online back in March 2020, 70% of our faculty have been trained because we are an Apple Distinguished School on technology in their discipline. And since that time, we've been doing boot camps and a lot around innovative instruction. So it really is a tremendous commitment on the part, both financially as well as just in terms of labor, on our faculty to make sure that the experience online is as close to a face-to-face experience as possible, and in some cases even better.
Right. Let's shift to enrollment. So nationally, enrollment has decreased for a number of years, as we all know. And that decrease has happened for a variety of reasons. Shifting demographics, smaller graduating high school classes, and questions regarding the affordability and visibility of higher education have all come to the forefront. It is probably the first time in our history that we have been challenged on the true value of a college education. So how are those questions driving your innovation and your change at your institution? What decisions are you making based on our new realities of how we are perceived?
I would jump in on that. I mean, I think we're working really hard, as you said, on innovative access and affordability programs, and we're really laser focused on student retention. We know that we have students who stepped away during the pandemic, and we're working very hard to stay in touch with those students, to bring them back when they're ready. Students had financial difficulties. They've lost family members. There've been a lot of trauma in their lives. And so we're trying to really make sure that even if they've stepped away from their studies, we're able to connect with them, to care for them, and to bring them back to us. We're also using micro scholarships to really strategically guide students into the university from high school. And we have completion grants that we're using to help students finish strong. And both of those help to offset the cost of attendance, which we know is such a concern for students and their families. We are turning to online resources like Dr. Finger. We have a one-to-one initiative. Our Digital Fluency Project puts an iPad and a Logitech Crayon in every student's hand. And because of that, our faculty are really adept at using online tools and resources that helps to keep the costs down for books and other class materials. But that also helps us to care for our students in different ways. So we're able to push out, for example, a food app so that students know both on campus and within the community where they might find food, because we understand that so many of our students are food insecure. And so that really does access all kinds of, the Digital Fluency Project helps us to access all kinds of tools and resources for the students that, again, directly correlate with retaining students and attracting students to our campus.
Thank you. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll just quickly. I think there's 2 points. I want to agree certainly with everything Dr. Edmondson said. I think we're all committing many more financial resources, both at the beginning of students' experience and retention grants in order to make sure that they graduate, and lots of deep analysis. I think every institution in the country right now, ours included, is doing tremendous amount of analysis of who are the students we're losing, who haven't come back, why aren't they, and a lot of one-on-one contact, as Dr. Edmondson said. I do think the other issue here is really this whole notion of value. And, our obviously in a robust economy, there a lot of times you don't have the undergraduate, you see a diminishment in undergraduate enrollment. We have actually seen a slight increase in enrollment over the last 7 years, about 8%, when many institutions are seeing the opposite. A lot of that we attribute to, we started this Office of Academic Innovation and Planning that puts resources against and works with people in the community about what are the next degrees required? What are we going to see, not tomorrow, but also 5-10 years from now. And so what that office has done is enabled us to get programs to market. We've gone down from about 48 months to get new programs to market to 9 to 12 months. It gives the faculty the resources they need to really put things in place, and that, and really emphasizes a lot of what is happening in the environment, health science, cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have to respond as institutions of higher education to provide students and their families with what they're going to need in terms of what are the programs in the area. And what's great about Pittsburgh is there's a lot of good research that the Pittsburgh area has.
Yeah, let's stay there a second. So Dr. Barry, the change in the current environment has made universities look to this innovation that Dr. Finger has shared with us about. Talk to us a little bit more about the innovation that you are doing at Slippery Rock. For example, I know that you have started a minor in esports. And I know when my folks brought that idea to me, initially I thought, okay, is this a test for the new president? Right? But the reality, after I did much of the research around that, is such a thriving industry right now. Talk to us a little bit about how you're making those kind of decisions, and how are you attuning, and jump in the rest of you, how are you attuning your new curriculum to the industries and the possible disruptions? It's really the first time, I think, as an industry that we are really looking at, are we offering the right kind of curriculum?
Mm-hmm. I think there are so many ways to answer that. Let me start just coming off of what Mary was saying. We have to really begin to look at what are students craving, what's the market craving. There's a delicate balance of not being too far ahead because maybe it's a fad. And as you know, it costs an awful lot to start a program, and you don't want to start a program only to realize that it was a quick blip. I think sometimes we have to think carefully about the balance between responding specifically to job training and the value of a broader bachelor's degree. I know there's a trend in our field to start doing small credentials, the micro credentials, the badging. And while there's a spot for that, particularly to get someone into the job market, I think we have to remember that bachelor's prepared people in many professions have much better outcomes. It's why the hospital systems are looking for bachelor's prepared nurses, because they know they've got better outcomes. Police officers with bachelor's degrees have better outcomes. There's data on that. I was reading Time magazine recently about ethics in artificial intelligence, and is artificial intelligence pushing forward some of the same biases that human intelligence pushes forward? And the argument was yes. So we need our computer folks to also have the ethics of a bachelor's degree and that education. And so I do worry in our environment that we're minimizing what we do to job training. I worry about that a lot because it's broader than that. Job training is teaching someone to use a tool. Our education is teaching them to make the tool. And I think we have to think of it that way. That being said, we also have to be responsive to the market. So I'm doing a dance here, and I understand that. For example, esports is an example. Probably a stronger example of Slippery Rock is our recent shift to engineering and health professions as important markets for us and important ways to serve our region. Now, we're not the first to any of those. We don't try to be the first, but what we look at is where is there real need, real student desire, where we can provide a high quality, affordable education. That's the mandate of the state system is to maintain its affordability, and we've done that reasonably well. So it's sometimes we're not quite the market leader. Like industry, you want to be first to market. Sometimes we want to be second or third to market. Make sure the market's good and then do it right. And that's what we've been looking at. I can talk about this all the time. I want to let my colleagues speak.
I would like to talk a little bit about what the three sister schools, California, Clarion, and Edinburgh, have to offer in terms of how we align with the market. We're looking at where our students come largely from 100 miles from the bedroom communities, and then they go back. So we have so many who are from Allegheny, Butler, the different counties who come to the three sister schools. What they come for is a solid education that lifts them in social mobility and economic mobility, so they can go back and very often work in their communities, about 70%. We know that teacher education is a critical need in the Pittsburgh and in the region of Pennsylvania, but we know that it's shifted. So we have STEM education needs, science and math and technology, ESL needs for second language, special education needs. So by changing what we're offering in education and aligning it directly with what the needs of the region are, that's just smart. That's smart business. It's smart education, and the students get jobs. They get jobs where they want to live and have their babies and have families and so forth. The same with healthcare, the changing demographic of healthcare. We've got an aging population, but we need healthcare providers. That's long to our history in terms of providing those kinds of things. Nursing is particularly a big one, but there's so many more jobs in healthcare. And the Bill's College and our universities offer, and certainly the other sister schools around the Pittsburgh area. So we're aligning with business and seeing what their needs are. Business is another example of the business degree. The stackable credentials that Bill's talking about, why not have degrees that are stackable? Because that's what we're good at. We're good at aligning with industry and creating these credentials. But we also know that the bachelor's degree does raise people up over life in terms of their finances, but also quality of life.
So our time is winding down, but let me ask all of you to consider this one last question, and that is, as we look to the future, what do you think the major changes are going to be in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? How are we going to be different?
Well, I think we're going to see ourselves.
Let me add this to it. And how are we going to stay the same?
Staying the same means that we will continue to provide high quality education that connects to the needs of the Commonwealth and serves the people of our Commonwealth well. I think how we're going to change is that we're going to see ourselves serving new and different populations. As we think, as I said earlier, about the students who have stepped away from school, people who have some college and no degree, those are the folks we have to try to reach. And that's one of the things that we have been working on here at Penn State Greater Allegheny. Before the pandemic, there was a report in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette called Growing Up Through the Cracks that talked about the high rates of child poverty in this region, in Rankin, McKeesport, the cities that surround our campus. And at that time, we were moved by that report because it also said there were a high number of adults who had some college and no degree. And so we worked to build ladders, to build associate degree programs so that we could bring those adults to our campus, to our degree programs, so that their life opportunities could change and the rates of childhood poverty could be lowered as a direct impact of the adults having degrees that would lead to better job opportunities for them. And so I think we really have to continue to think about how we're nimble and how we serve different populations so that the social circumstances that are part of the current environment may be changed.
Thanks.
And I just want to say that I think, this notion that we've only become nimble in the last few years I think we shined a spotlight on it, but and we've had to be more nimble, but institutions of higher education have been nimble for a long time. We've developed adult degree programs, we have graduate programs. We have tried to meet people where they're at for a long time. And certainly at Seton Hill, that's been our history for over 100 years. But I think what is also important, and Bill talked about this earlier a bit, or touched on it, is that we are preparing people, young people and older people, for not just their first career, but their second, their third, their fourth, for all the iterations. I mean, frankly, cybersecurity was not a degree 10 years ago. I mean, and so we are preparing them to be able to think, to be able to process, to be able to be critically reason. And so the liberal arts piece of what we do, the core of having a liberal arts education, or at least a framework of liberal arts, is really important, because it's and we all have these kinds of programs, but it's not just the workforce development. It's not just meeting people where they're at with regard to what the business community wants, because the business community tells us they want people who think critically, who are able to make presentations, who are able to get on a plane or on a Zoom meeting and solve a problem. And it's also about the imagination and the creativity that comes from the liberal arts, and the ability to have empathy, the ability to read a novel about someone who's not like myself and really have empathy. And I think that is the core of who we are as higher education, and we're going to continue it, because that's going to help create good citizens as well as good employees.
From the perspective of Penn West University and our three sister schools, the thing that will remain the same for us is we will always be applied users of great cutting edge research. We've got plenty of wonderful research institutions in this valley and in this corridor. And that's what we do. We take that, we apply it, we teach. We will continue to teach in the classroom in superior ways, the best practices, because it's what we do, whether it's virtual, face-to-face, out in the field, out doing research. So that will remain the same. But what will be different is the fluidity of how things are taught and how we connect with our students. Students will demand a seamless transition. They may, instead of dropping out of college, they may stop out for a little bit and then move back in their own career path with lots of support services. As the complex population gets more and more different from the way we've traditionally taught, we have different needs we have to support. Our students were access universities, my three. They're wonderful access universities that lift people up. And with that, we have to make sure that our students are able to get the degree and not leave without a degree and with debt, because that's the promise it's a broken promise. So that fluidity, that seamlessness, that change, and the price is going to matter. It's going to really matter to people that when they graduate, they can get a job in the field that they love, that they're prepared for, whether it's liberal arts or applied technology, and that they can have a fruitful life.
Yeah, I so agree. There's one question in the chat for Dr. Alicia, and so I'm going to invite her to come back on the screen. And that question is, how has the perception of technical colleges changed over the last couple of years? And has the pandemic put more focus on technical training? Dr. Alicia? Well, hopefully she may not hear us. So hopefully she'll be able to get that question answered for you as well in the chat. So I want to thank all of you for sharing your perspectives. Oh, here she is. Here she is. Do you want to try to answer that question really quickly?
Repeat the question. I was actually talking to a student. I was called out of my office for a moment.
That is always acceptable.
Always. Thank you.
So the question was, how has the perception of technical colleges changed over the last couple of years? And has the pandemic put more focus on technical training? We've been talking a little bit about the difference between training for a job or really providing students the background to really have an evolving career. From your perspective, what do you think about that question?
It's a great question, and it's something I've been not only thinking about, but we've had several conversations on campus about. I think the perception, particularly over the last, I would say 3 to 5 years, as we started talking more about infrastructure and building and rebuilding, I think the focus on technical schools has certainly increased. And I certainly think that the value add is something that people are really looking at. And what I mean by that, what we know is students who typically come to applied and technical institutions are very much interested in looking at careers. It's kind of the first thing that they're talking to us about. And so we try to make sure that our curriculum is current, it's relevant, and we're working consistently with business and industry partners. So I think the conversation always centers around how we can get students in and employed. We have a 95% infill placement rate. So we're really excited. So the conversation now with parents is about affordability, of course, but it's also about the what happens next once they have that degree in hand. And so in the technical space, we're looking at stackable credentials, which is becoming very popular, where students are stacking from the certificate level all the way up through bachelor's. We offer bachelor's degrees as well. So there's a real renaissance, I think, that's happening, greater appreciation for the work that we do and can do. The second part of your question, repeat the second part one more time.
I think you covered all pieces of it.
Good
job. So
Thank you.
I'm getting the signal to wrap up. So I want to wrap up, but first let me just thank all the panelists. I think it is exciting that we are in an industry that is changing every day, that is requiring us to rethink and reimagine how we will innovate and how we will meet the needs of the 21st century student as well as the workforce. So I want to thank you all for sharing your perspectives, and I look forward to working with you in our journey to improve the higher education landscape.
Thank you.
And if everyone can just hold
Have
for
a
1
great day.
second, we're taking a quick picture. Smile. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, everyone. What a great way of kickstarting this beautiful first launch conference of Pittsburgh. Comprehensive. Everyone was really spot on. And again, I would love to appreciate Alicia, Kathy, William, Mary, Dale, Elizabeth, and Jacqueline for being with us today and for such a comprehensive discussion on how Pittsburgh institutions are reshaping the educational paradigm. As I said before, we're conducting 3 polls today, super fun, all of them. We're going to get your thoughts on current things happening in Pittsburgh and in the world of business overall. The next one should be coming up on your screen shortly. Let's see if it comes. There it is. Perfect. Please go ahead and share your valuable thoughts on the following question. Aside from increasing revenues and profits, which of the following is the top priority for your organization in 2022? So go ahead, and let's see what you guys are answering. In the meantime, if you're enjoying today's program, be sure to check out next events starting next week with Minneapolis-St. Paul, February 17th. That's going to be a blast. And we're going to continue March 2nd with San Antonio, another of our market expansions in the South region. Then we're going to go into Jacksonville, Greater Fort Lauderdale, Greater Orlando, and North and Central Jersey are also coming up soon in the next few months. If you know anyone in these cities or any other who would like to participate in such reports, please reach out to me at jclark@capitalaa.com. In addition, stay in touch by signing up for any of our market newsletters or receive a complimentary copy of our reports by emailing contact@capitalaa.com or visiting our website, capitalanalyticsassociates.com. As our poll is coming to an end, I would like to introduce our second panel called Going Green, Pittsburgh's Next Steps as a National Leader in Sustainability. Moderating the panel is Jeff Young, Manager and Principal of Pittsburgh's Studio Perkins Eastman. Jeff, please turn on your audio and camera. It's nice to see you. I'll hand it to you so you can introduce the panelists.
Great, thank you very much. Good day, all. My name is Jeff Young. I am Managing Principal here at Perkins Eastman Architects. I have the pleasure of introducing our distinguished panel today. Clint Zediak, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at WGL Energy. Matt Pizzarella, Director of Energy at Buchanan, Ingersoll and Rooney. And finally, Ray Volpat, President of Volpat Construction. We'll not spend a lot of time talking about their companies. We would really encourage the audience today to check all of these folks out and their respective companies online. So yes, within the realm of going green, the broad topics of sustainability, green design, and resiliency remain top of mind these days. We must deploy best practices within our respective businesses to create a more sustainable and resilient future. This is no longer optional. Let's use this time today to dissect what each of you and your companies are doing to positively impact the environment at this most important moment in time. So with that backdrop, let us have a kind of general question about Pittsburgh. We know Pittsburgh is routinely recognized as a leader in sustainability. Over the last few years, what do each of you feel has best positioned Pittsburgh as a leader in the area of green and sustainable development? Clint, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So at WGL Energy, we're a retail energy provider, and we have several regional sales offices in cities across the Mid-Atlantic. And what I think really separates Pittsburgh is not only the relatively high number of organizations we have in this area focused on sustainability and renewable energy, but how they collaborate with each other and the business and public sector leaders of the communities. So for example, you look at Green Building Alliance, the two 2030 districts we have, Sustainable Pittsburgh, Phipps Conservatory, the Energy Innovation Center, the list goes on and on and on. And prior to COVID, you could go to almost any event in the energy sector and see members from those organizations collaborating, sharing ideas, talking with each other. And that's something that you don't typically find in a lot of cities. And I think something very unique to Pittsburgh, and it could be a big competitive advantage for the community going forward.
Matt, your thoughts on this?
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you. I think what has set Pittsburgh apart is not only the human capital, many of the organizations that Clint mentioned, but we are blessed with robust foundation community that has helped to fuel the various universities as well as NGOs. But more than anything else, it is the natural resources below our feet. Natural gas has led the global decrease in CO2 emissions over the last many years. The United States has outpaced many nations combined as a result. And what's important about that is you cannot bring on a megawatt of renewable power without the complementary clean burning natural gas that goes in part with that. So in addition to Pennsylvania being atop the largest producing natural gas field, we have seen tremendous investment, certainly at Buchanan. We're a law firm and lobbying firm, and the increased and continued interest from the renewable sector to not only innovate here, but deploy those technologies, it continues to impress every single day. So I really think it's that combination of natural resources and human capital that has helped set us apart, that you cannot move the gas field, and the human resources obviously can move around, but Pittsburgh's done a tremendous job of retaining that talent.
Fantastic. Ray, do you want to unmute and provide your thoughts?
Sure. It's been a really interesting time, particularly over the last, I guess it's been almost 30 years since LEED has come along. And, throughout the years, we've seen many of our clients strive to achieve LEED certification on their projects. And I think what that's done is that's created an environment where the architectural firms, our local architectural firms, started to just design sustainably. Jeff, you probably have some insight into that. But it's as a general practice, we're seeing more sustainable design. Whether a client of ours is looking for certification of their buildings or not. We've got clients who are now talking about decarbonization, particularly the local universities. It's a large undertaking, but they're committed to creating an environment on their campus that makes us more responsible occupants of the planet. We actually in 2018 partnered with Forest Hills So there are communities that are looking to do the same thing. Forest Hills built the first net zero energy building in our region, and we'll be working with Aetna on their community center to do the same thing. So a lot of our clients see the importance of in their construction trying to be more responsible with energy usage and decarbonization.
Thanks for, yeah, I mean, that certainly from an architect's perspective, most, if not all of our clients are seeking at a minimum quality, sustainable practices, whether or not they're seeking a plaque on the wall or not. Those are nice things to have, but there's just, it's so embedded now in sort of the design solutions we're trying to provide. It's so top of mind. What are the most exciting and significant ways you're seeing green values and sustainability permeate through your respective client bases? Let me start with Matt on that topic.
I mean, this is one of the most exciting areas that we've seen and rapidly advancing. I know many of us were talking about that prior to the call, but we have probably received more inquiries for various ESG programs over the last several years than any time previously. So while we have a robust energy and environmental practice at Buchanan, which again services the full energy industry, obviously, we are seeing corporations across the spectrum, large and small, approaching us with regards to getting their ESG programs off the ground. More importantly, and I'm sure I speak for many employers throughout the region, most companies had really excellent programs in place, even if they weren't formalized. So what we're really helping people do is to recognize, to measure, and then to improve those programs. And as I mentioned, we're seeing that either through legislative action, shareholder proxies, or oftentimes larger, those of us in the supply chain industry, or service industry, you get external pressure from your various customers and clients that want to see more ESG within the workforce. And that goes obviously beyond just environmental and sustainability.
Yeah,
Clint, same question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. To piggyback on that, Matt, from our perspective as a retail supplier, we talk to the end user that are writing those ESG reports, right? And they're looking to fulfill those requirements. So two of the trends we've seen recently, one is in the carbon offset arena. And that's a technology and an asset that's been around for probably over a decade now in various forms. But that's something that's becoming more and more popular over the recent year or two, I'd say. We have a lot of interest in companies looking to purchase carbon offsets to help couple with programs that they're doing with the technology to lower their actual use of carbon. So that's been one. And the second has been certified gas, or what's also called responsibly sourced gas, where new technology is being put on top of well pads to reduce the methane emission from those pads, such that the end user of that gas can make an environmental claim against that. And that's a fairly new sector in the natural gas, but you've seen announcements from EQT and Penn Resources moving this direction. And again, from our perspective, we're seeing more and more customers ask about this. And to me, this is very analogous to what happened in the renewable energy certificate market 10, 12 years ago when RECs were created. I see a lot of parallels in those two sectors right now.
You've both mentioned the large natural gas reserve that we're sitting on top of right now. Is that play happening at full capacity right now, Matt? And is it, and how do you see it kind of expanding relative to the economy here locally?
It is certainly a mature gas field at this point. It is often forgotten that Pennsylvania was the birthplace of the oil and gas industry many years ago. At one point, the McDonald oil field in Washington County was the largest producing oil field in the world. So it is fitting that the largest producing gas field is here as well. There is a lot of run room remaining in both the Marcellus, the Utica shales, as well as other shales. it is a market commodity based business. So there was really sort of the big ramp up and then the levelization, and then this can continue for many, many years into the future. The key that will sustain not only that development, both for job creators and seekers, but also on the environmental side, is if there are policies in place in the United States that allow us to export. As Clint had pointed out, EQT, I believe, is the first to have 100% certified responsibly sourced gas. That is from right here in the Marcellus Shale. If we want to see cleaner burning natural gas and reduced emissions across the globe, we will need to see increased interest and activity in exporting that gas to other countries, because those molecules of energy will come from somewhere. By 2050, I believe the global population is set to exceed 10 billion people. That is, despite all of the tremendous strides in sustainability and more responsible building, as well as sourcing, those human beings will require energy. And if we care about the future, we will want to ensure that that energy is responsibly produced and with the least impact on the environment as possible.
Ray, we know the construction industry does its fair share to contribute to the carbon footprint, around the globe. What sort of technologies or innovations are you doing, your company doing to offset or mitigate some of those challenges inherent in the construction business?
Yeah, so a lot of what we do is remodeling, and when you remodel spaces, you're tearing out building products that had been previously installed. A lot of times, those building products are there's nothing wrong with them. They can be reused. So reclaiming building products during the demolition process is something that we've started to implement. There are companies in Pittsburgh, such as Construction Junction, Doors Unhinged, that are willing to come and take building products that we demolish away and reclaim them and use them in other forms. We also see our clients looking for alternative energy forms, such as solar and geothermal. There are other ways that they can produce energy besides just using what's on the grid. Recycling is another. We've been recycling. We've been using a waste management company that takes our demolition debris, our construction debris. They separate it, they recycle it, and they give us the paperwork on how that material has been recycled and how much of it has gone to dump sites. So there are things that we can do in the construction process. One of the others is we're using a technology now. We've partnered with a company called Ursuleo, and Ursuleo, they develop digital twin technology using Unity. We're piloting a program right now with one of the local universities where we're going to use a digital twin of one of our projects to collaborate through the construction process, limiting the amount of time that people have to visit the job site. There's also some use for the technology post-construction for building management, for building decarbonization as well. So some really interesting things going on right now in the construction industry.
If I could add, one example. This is an event about the city of Pittsburgh and all the great things that are going on. Jeff, I know that you guys are nearby us. We're in the Union Trust building. If you ever want to see the perfect example of Pittsburgh's role in not only energy development, innovation, and sustainability, you should visit the Union Trust building. This was erected in, I think it was 1915, 1916 by Henry Clay Frick. Think about the world at that time and the fact that it is not only still a gorgeous building, but it's a sustainable building with its LEED certification while maintaining all of that historic charm. And I think, You do not see that in every city. Many of us visit cities all over the United States. You don't see those sorts of buildings anywhere. And I think that is a perfect physical example of just the amount of innovation, not only from construction, but architecture, as well as all the sourcing that goes into those buildings.
It's a key point, Matt. And I think, yeah, from our perspective, the ultimate recycling approach is to salvage these buildings, give them new life, reinvent them, adaptive reuse. You think about how much industry you're saving when you're not demolishing a building and sending that waste off. It tells a great story, right? There's an authenticity to a lot of what we have here in Western PA, a lot of great architecture, a lot of historic structures that can be reimagined and have sort of new life. So completely agree about the Union Trust building. It's a key example. Somebody had mentioned the energy grid, just going back to Clint, and as a retail supplier, are there particular solutions you're implementing to foster and encourage a more reliable, a cleaner energy grid?
Yeah, just to, add a fine point to what Matt said, there's a saying in the industry that the cleanest megawatt hour in decatherm is the one that you don't use, right? So to the extent you can rehab these buildings and make them energy efficient, that is absolutely the best thing to do for the environment going forward. But to answer your question on the retail energy supplier, so the grid operator in this area of the country is called PJM, and they basically put out peak alert days in the summertime. Usually happens when you get 2 or 3 hot days in a row. Usually that second or third day, the ground doesn't have enough time to cool and it just kind of heats up. So PJM will put out a peak alert, and as a retail energy supplier, we will basically put out a peak alert to our customers, notifying them of a peak day coming, usually within the next 12 to 24 hours. And that gives the customer the opportunity to adjust their load accordingly. And not everyone can do it, but as the technologies advance, more and more consumers are able to do that. And it not only saves them money in the long term, but it also helps reduce the stress on the grid during those peak hours. And so that's something we're pretty proud of, and we've been doing that for a number of years now.
So maybe moving ahead to the future and looking ahead a little bit. And I'll open this up to any of you. Among your clients, what are the main challenges they face in implementing green initiatives for their projects and operations as they move forward? Hopefully not cost being the first answer.
Well, I could talk for 30 minutes, so I'll give the floor to someone else first and then jump in.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll just kick it off more broadly. I think that the greatest challenge, and I sort of touched upon this earlier, is organizing the client's efforts and interests, not only around ESG and environmental sustainable related programs, but more broader diversity, equity, and inclusion that typically falls into ESG typically falls within in tandem in those efforts. And what we often find is it is something that is in the back of many clients' minds. They are thinking about it. Far too often, they fall behind. And once you fall behind in that cycle, it is very difficult to continue. Everyone wants to be a leader. That's a great thing. And the only way that you can lead is by getting ahead of the curve. I think that is the greatest challenge, is knowing where to start. Where do we play in this space? How do we structure it? How do we measure it? Because if you're not measuring those efforts, you cannot improve upon those efforts. And anyone that is spent any amount of time in this space knows that you must see continued improvement over time. That either comes from the policy side, or it comes from the shareholder side, or from your customers. So it is typically getting ahead of those efforts. I think oftentimes people aren't sure where to begin. And what we find is there's typically fantastic programs that are already in place. It is a matter of structuring and formalizing those efforts.
Well, I think, Matt, that collaboration is the key.
Yeah.
There's thoughts on everybody's end. I mean, speaking from a construction standpoint, we have ideas, our architects have ideas, and when the owners come to us and tell us that they want to build and be more responsible with the environment, we can bring those ideas to the table. and talk to them about it. As long as they bring their ideas and we can match those ideas up and talk to them about how they can move forward with being more sustainable with their construction, I think that would be helpful.
Clint, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, and from our perspective, I think Matt, again, hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of uncertainty. The energy industry is very fragmented in the sense that if you're looking for energy efficiency options, carbon offsets, natural gas, you name it, there's a variety of not only manufacturers, but consultants, industry experts, and quite often as companies are putting their ESG reports together, they frankly don't know where to start. And so we always advise clients to, start somewhere, right? Just take a look at your time horizon, take a look at your budget. What can you do in the next 6 months? What can you do next year? What can you do in the next 5 years, 10, et cetera? And just try to narrow down some of those options, because there are a variety of technologies, a variety of solutions out there to reduce your energy usage, to make it cleaner, to make it greener. And just starting is quite often the hardest part. But once people can get some of those things in a plan over the next foreseeable future, there's a lot of options out there that people can move upon.
Is there specifically an area where the public sector can support all of this or make it easier, or where do they fall into all of this?
Absolutely. I mean, going back to my example of the renewable energy certificates, when states started putting renewable portfolio standards into their utility tariffs, that basically grew the REC market at that time. And 10 or 12 years later, RECs are very common, a very popular option for companies to satisfy their green requirements and enable green marketing. So if similar legislation happened around responsibly sourced gas or carbon offsets, I think you'd see those markets advance and mature as well.
I think this may sound strange coming from a law firm, but oftentimes the best thing that the public sector from a policy perspective can do is to put in, as Clint pointed out, you want some incentives to be able to reward and recognize those that are innovating and doing the right things. The worst thing that can happen is making it too onerous, too difficult, too unpredictable for industry. There are, if we look at the significant investments that have been made, it is reasonable for companies and their shareholders to get some return on that investment, because they will reinvest that money in further innovation. And if you look at some of the greatest advancements that we've seen, certainly while some of it has stemmed from public-private partnerships that have looked into this from a research perspective, a lot of it has come from industry seeking to compete with one another. That is why you saw the development of unconventional oil and gas, which, as I pointed out earlier, has helped to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions more than anything else over the last 10 or 20 years. That happened in the private sector. There were some public components in terms of the original R&D that went into it, but those were risks that private businesses took so that they could compete with one another. And as those companies became more established and their business was more profitable, that's how you get to a point where you see companies now saying, I'm going to strive for 100% responsibly sourced gas, or I'm going to offset all of my carbon emissions, either through a trade program or some sort of carbon pricing. And I'm not sure any of us would have seen some of the industries that are now behind those initiatives a few years ago, the way we've seen such a dramatic change in the last couple of years.
Ray, anything from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that leading by example is a big way to help move things forward. We had our previous mayor was committed to net zero initiatives. He signed an executive order to make Pittsburgh fully carbon neutral by 2050. We have several areas in town that are part of a 2030 initiative. Look at what Forest Hills did. I talked about that before. These are local governments that are leading by example and showing the rest of us that there's an importance to being responsible and I'm going to go back to being people of the planet, responsible members of society, and I think that within our area we're sort of leading by example.
Appreciate that, Ray. Well, I think we're at about time. It was my job to land this baby on time. So I think we're there. I want to thank Clint, Matt, and Ray for a really nice and hopefully insightful conversation today about sustainability, resiliency, the future of our planet, and what measures we should be taking to do our part, right, in what's such an important issue of our time. So thank you all for a great conversation today.
Everyone can just hold for 1 second. We're going to take a quick picture. Smile.
Smile.
Perfect.
I will say this, the backdrops of the mayor and the universities far exceeded that of the four of us. So if we do this again, guys, we're going to have to get better backgrounds.
Yeah. Totally agree with you, Matt. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Clint, Matthew, and Ray for sharing such exceptional insights on the local energy and infrastructure sector. So we're going to go with the last poll of the day. It's going to come up soon on your screens, and we encourage you to participate, just as you did before, to gauge the temperature on the room on the following topic. This is going to be an easy one. Check it out. Pittsburgh is ranked as one of the top cities to be a sports fan. Wouldn't you agree? What's your favorite sport? So go ahead and please participate in this great poll. While you're answering, don't forget to check out our other platforms that Abby mentioned in her opening remarks, our Invest Insights video platform, as well as the Invest Insights podcast. In that platform, we interview high-level CEOs on a variety of topics from cryptocurrency to creativity, throughout a pandemic, to the Great Resignation and retaining and talent and more. Besides that, we're going to be covering some other topics in season 5, which is going to be filmed in March and released shortly thereafter on our YouTube channel. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts or whatever you choose your best listenings. As the poll is closing, I'm going to introduce our third panel for today's event, which is going fantastically, to be honest. Financial forecasts, what the future holds for Pittsburgh's financial sector. The panel presenter of this last panel is Dave Reed, Pennsylvania's state president for First Commonwealth Bank. Dave, if you could turn on your video and unmute yourself, and please go ahead and introduce the panel moderator and panelists.
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Reed, president of First Commonwealth Bank's Pennsylvania region. For those of you who might not be familiar with First Commonwealth, we work hard each and every day to improve the financial lives of our neighbors and their businesses in areas like personal banking, small business, commercial banking, insurance, investments, trust, and estate planning. We're headquartered just east of Pittsburgh in Indiana, Pennsylvania. We've been proudly located here for over 100 years. We have nearly 1,500 employees across 2 states, from Cincinnati, Ohio to Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Across those 2 states, we have about 120 offices, 23 of which are actually located in Allegheny County. And in April of this year, we'll be proudly opening our 24th office on Route 19 in Wexford. While we all know how challenging the last 2 years have been, we've been very proud of the work our employees have done to help our clients across these 2 states. Our employees earned the distinction of being the #1 SBA lender in the greater Pittsburgh region in 2021. We were named one of the Post-Gazette's top workplaces in Pittsburgh for the last 3 years. We were recognized by Forbes as one of the top 5 banks in Pennsylvania and one of the world's best banks for the 3rd straight year as well. We also, during the pandemic, funded nearly $850 million worth of PPP loans and protected nearly 80,000 jobs. Also, giving back to our community is at the core of who we are as a community bank. We're proud of our local partnerships, as well as having business and service relationships with groups like Habitat for Humanity of Greater Pittsburgh Food Bank, Rebuilding Together Pittsburgh, just to name a few in the Pittsburgh region. In addition to the normal set of financial products, we also offer employer health and benefits consulting services, risk management, retirement plan administration and consulting, and a full variety of treasury management solutions. As always, our goal is to be the best bank for our neighbors and their businesses. If you'd like to learn more about First Commonwealth Bank, check us out at fcbanking.com, or you can just contact me directly. Thank you again for the opportunity to be with you all today and participate in today's program and talk just a little bit about First Commonwealth Bank. It's now my pleasure to introduce Lisa Haley Huff, Market Executive, Middle Market Banking for Western Pennsylvania, JP Morgan Chase Commercial Banking, who's moderating the panel in their discussion on financial forecast, what the future holds for Pittsburgh's financial sector. It's all yours, Lisa.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. And good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to see you. And certainly we're all pleased to be here. As Dave mentioned, I will be moderating this wonderful and esteemed panel where we will really talk about the financial forecast and what the future holds for Pittsburgh's financial sector. So I would like to introduce the panelists first. We have Michael Godwin, who is the Chief Investment Officer from Fragasso Financial Advisors. Welcome, Michael. We have Scott Love, who is the Senior Vice President, Economic and Equity Analysis at West Banco. Welcome, Scott. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And certainly last but not least, we have Carrie Coghill, the President and CEO of Coghill Investment Strategies, LLC. Great to see you, Carrie. When I think about Pittsburgh and our financial future, it's not a secret that really over the last 5 to 10 years, you've seen a strong number of large banks around the country who have decided to make Pittsburgh a part of their home. And I think that speaks a lot to Pittsburgh and the city and the region, and we will certainly talk a little bit about that. So a couple of themes that we'll talk about today. We'll talk about our young professionals and their thoughts on finance in Pittsburgh. We'll talk about the liquidity and the economic environment. Kind of dovetailing on what the mayor was referencing to, we will also talk about robotics and artificial intelligence, and then we'll kind of close out on some of the emerging technology as it relates to cryptocurrency and NFTs. So I'm going to start by opening up the first question and really setting the stage for any of our panelists. Pittsburgh is known as one of the top cities for young financial professionals to begin their careers, and many of us were one of those young professionals. What underlying fundamentals make Pittsburgh so attractive for these young professionals?
I'm happy to jump right in. So, Pittsburgh is such a great community. And Lisa, as you said, it's really everything that Pittsburgh has to offer that is causing our economy to continue to grow. And for young professionals to come to this city, have access to everything that they would have in a really large city, our culture, our sports teams, our restaurants, our medical centers, and to have all that with the cost of living, the lower cost of living relative to other cities. But I think most importantly, having been a lifelong Pittsburgher, is really that sense of community. And for young people in the city of Pittsburgh, their ability to connect with others, to have mentors, to have advocates that really will help them advance their careers. I don't really know that there's any other city like that.
I would agree.
Lisa, I'd like to piggyback off what Carrie said, because that was very poignant, I think. I worked in both Chicago and New York City for a significant portion of my career. And though Pittsburgh may lack the sheer number of people working in the financial industry, I think we more than make up for that in the talent pool and the diverse corporate opportunities we have here. And in my experience, what I've noticed that really sets Pittsburgh apart is the collaborative nature with which we work with one another. When I was in New York and Chicago, I found that it was often kind of like an every person for themselves mentality. While here in Pittsburgh, business is certainly much more collaborative. I actually meet with and work with some of my competitors in discussing our market outlooks and positioning, and I find that to be very beneficial and rewarding.
And I'll jump in too. I I was once like Michael, lived somewhere else, and again with a lot less gray hair than I have now. And what I found that it's just the wide range of opportunity that you have within the city. I think it's one of the things that drives people to it, is that you've got a wide range of not only companies, organizations, but also size of financial organizations that can help you grow and get that opportunity, where in some of the other cities, like Michael had mentioned, that there may not be as much opportunity to advance. And whether it's a smaller organization or growing into a larger organization, I think Pittsburgh has a number of those that kind of fit the bill and give young professionals a number of different opportunities that they may not have at other cities or regions within the U.S.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'll piggyback on something that Carrie had mentioned when you talk about Pittsburgh and what it's like living here as a young professional. I would say one thing is also the quality of life. So if there's anything that has come out of the pandemic, and we'll talk about that in the next question, one of the things that young people, middle-aged, older individuals, it's the message that continues to be conveyed, is that I really want a quality of life in what I'm doing, which means that's a healthy work-life balance. And I think that's also a big part of that. So really on top of that, when we think about the last 2 years, what would you identify as some key takeaways from the handling of the issues of the last 2 years? And how are those lessons learned currently benefiting your respective organizations, operations, and how you do business?
I think, Lisa, I'll start if you don't mind. The biggest takeaway for us, without a doubt, is that we've recognized that a virtual setting, or at least a partially virtual setting, works for our firm. I mean, our company surveys have shown that nearly 90% of employees would like to have a flexible or at least a hybrid working schedule indefinitely. And I think due to the tremendous amounts of technological improvements we've seen, particularly over the last couple of years, working remotely is going to, I think, work both for us as employees and our clients. But I do believe that we are in, let's say, the early stages of this, call it a big experiment, to see what is the most pragmatic and maybe the most efficient way to give employees flexibility, but to also not diminish corporate culture, which is something that I think many people might not put enough stock into yet.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, and I would build off that. It's really interesting because I still think we're very early in this experiment. And I think from a corporate perspective, I know for my company, I really don't believe our clients have suffered. I think that we've actually communicated with them more, we've met with them more. And where the challenge comes in is with the culture and really with the learning opportunities. One of the things that we instilled over this time that for each of our employees, I have a small firm, there are 6 of us, is one-on-one mentor Zoom calls with the team. And that's something that we'll continue to do once we're back in the office. But the hard part is really for the young people, the people that are wanting to advance their careers. And we all know that happens through relationship. So if you don't have the ability to, have that water cooler discussion and form those relationships, it's much more challenging to do virtually.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, Lisa is one of the other bankers on this panel. I think that one of the things we've learned is flexibility, and there's no longer bankers' hours, right? We no longer get the Wednesdays off and we shut it down at 4, right? So, I think that's the thing that we've picked up and learned is just the interaction with clients is that it can be anywhere and anytime. And I think the clients themselves and even some of our customers have become more comfortable with the technology and the flexibility and the ability to communicate and interact with them on their schedule. I think is what our organization's taken away from and what we'll continue to use and evolve as we move forward. And I think to Michael's point, it's kind of an ongoing learning process. But I think that we're making the right strides of being flexible and being able to work with clients, customers, but also our internal folks as well, and to give them that flexibility to enjoy that work-life balance that Carrie had talked about early on with the number of amenities that the city has to offer.
Yeah, I would agree. It's really getting a chance to touch clients and not feel as though anything has been lost. And in fact, maybe some things have been strengthened during the process. So completely understand. So let's let's move to, we talked about the past, right? And over the last 2 years, let's talk about the current landscape. An unprecedented amount of liquidity has been injected into the economy over the past 2 years, coinciding with low interest rates. Now that is slowly changing, we realize that. Are overall asset valuations today overpriced, or are they catching up to really where they should be?
I'm happy to start the conversation there, Lisa. I think you're right that the high amount of liquidity that was injected into the economy, really both from the Federal Reserve and from Congress via stimulus checks, that significantly helped create demand for goods that otherwise really probably wouldn't have been there. And this increase in demand has allowed companies to really generate significant earnings growth over the past couple of years. So with low interest rates coupled with strong earnings, I think it's no wonder why the stock market has done very well recently. But I think your question is really what's going to happen going forward. So as we look ahead to an environment where the Fed will be raising interest rates, and after today's inflation numbers, I think it's almost a certainty that they'll begin doing so here in March. And we're probably going to see consumer demand for goods begin to slow. I think it's going to be harder for companies to generate strong earnings growth from here. So we're a little less optimistic on the stock market going forward than some of our peers. We're not outright bears by any stretch of the imagination, but we believe stock returns will be much lower than what we've seen over the past 3 years. And investors really probably need to sort of reset expectations and be positioned a little bit more defensively over the coming year or two.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time because the economic landscape has changed. We've changed from the Federal Reserve really wanting to prop up inflation to now having to deal with inflation because of all of this liquidity that has been injected into the economy. The question about the overvaluation of asset prices, you really have to take a step back and say, well, what assets are we talking about? Are we talking about high growth stocks? Are we talking about, blue chip stocks that pay dividends? They react very differently. And I think that part of the challenge that investors have is that they do want to throw this into a bucket and say stocks are going down. Well, yes, some stocks are going to go down, some stocks may stay the same, and some may actually go up. So when you're looking at a landscape that's changing, you kind of have to be one step ahead. And I completely agree with what Michael said. We're looking right now at an economy that actually may be slowing. And when the Federal Reserve raises interest rates going into a slowing economy, that's the type of action that can actually push a recession if they go too far. But don't be misled by the media, because the Fed never said they were raising interest rates at all. They probably will. But, sometimes I just scratch my head and say, why did that reporter just say that the Fed is raising rates 5 times? Jerome Powell never said that. So he said he's watching the data, as I think most of us on this panel are.
Yeah.
To kind of speak to the overvaluedness and specifically into equity markets, I think that, that's a fair point, right? I think when we've looked back historically, we've seen the highest 3-year annualized return in the S&P 500, or one of the highest since the Great Recession. Obviously, markets revert to long-term averages, and I think when we look at that perspective, we should come to expect that rates of return will be somewhat lower than average at some point in time. And that's likely closer to the near future than at some point further away. To Michael's point, equity markets are driven by earnings growth, and what we've seen is earnings growth is strong. But over the past 3 years, what we saw is the multiple for what investors are willing to pay for that really expanded. And I think what we're seeing now is a little bit more reversion to that long-term average, putting some downward pressure on equities, broadly S&P 500 equities. But again, I think there's a little bit of that to come to be expected going forward. And to Carrie's point, kind of other asset classes, it's going to be determined on where that growth is going to come from and what investors are willing to pay for that. With a rising interest rate environment, an environment that we really haven't seen in quite some time, that's going to put different views on some of the investors and what they're willing to pay for those.
So Scott, I'm going to piggyback on a couple of things that you said and really come back to you. What are some of the main shifts that you're seeing in client portfolios? as they adjust to this financial landscape and the tightening interest rate environment and all that we're beginning to see.
Yeah, and Michael brought it up kind of initially when we started this discussion about CPI reading this morning, and obviously it's the highest reading we've seen since 1982. That's an environment that a lot of our clients and haven't really participated in or viewed is a interest rate or an inflation level this high. We saw a 10-year treasury today that's the highest that we've seen since 2019 at above 2%. And so this is an environment that a lot of investors are really beginning to look at. And one of the things that we've been focusing on for a lot of our clients and investors is just purchasing power. When you're looking at an inflation reading as high as it is now, and again, it's likely that it will come down. We saw a pretty high reading the past two. We think that it moderates throughout the year. But again, if we're still talking about a year-end number for CPI that's 3-4.5%, those people who generate income from their investment portfolio looking at a 10-year treasury at 2 are going to have negative purchasing power. And that's one of the things that we've been really focused on is positioning for that. And then you kind of layer on, in the past couple of years, it was really nowhere to hide or nowhere to invest other than equities. And I think some of that's rolling off. So we're being pretty diligent in, making sure that we're structuring income streams for clients that consider inflation, that consider the overall volatility of the equity markets, and try to blend in, a lower correlation that will help in times of volatility like this.
Yeah. And so, Carrie, I'm going to address this next question to you, and we're going to go back to the economy again. When you think about the economy and with the tax changes, so now we're going to talk about a little bit about the tax changes. What are some of the core tenets and strategies you advise your clients in regards to how successfully navigate this landscape, and what are some new innovations and opportunities that has this spawned?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially picking up on what Scott said about all of us really being concerned about, what does this mean for the stock market and how do we reposition portfolios when a lot of clients that have equities are also sitting on large capital gains. And one of the biggest mistakes that investors make is that they don't ever want to pay taxes. So they hold on to positions that maybe they should be diversifying and ultimately get hurt. So a core tenet of solid investment management is to don't let the tax tail wag the dog, because it creates a whole lot of risk in a portfolio. And you really have to step back and say, what do I want my money to do for me? When we know that, if we're looking to generate cash flow or we're looking to get money to the next generation, then we can look at the dynamics of where the tax laws are today and where they're going to get creative and look at the use of, whether if a person's charitably inclined, and how can we maybe liquidate in a charitable trust but still send income to a client, and how do we push off gains between various years. There are a lot of different strategies that we can use to help to mitigate those tax consequences, because it's really surprising how taxes drive a lot of investor decisions that can lead to mistakes.
And we're in that season right now. I'm sorry, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect good example. I mean, we think more recently, we saw Facebook, Meta now report earnings, and in one day they lost $232 billion out of their market cap. I kind of put that in perspective. Enron went bankrupt and their peak market cap was 68 billion, and it was the 7th largest country. So if you're worried about the tax tail, we like to say nobody went broke paying taxes. And so, I think it's one of those things that, we like to frame that discussion. We also like Carrie's kind of perspective of, let's set out a budget. Let's make sure that it's in line. But again, there's times where positions get way out of whack and you've got to pay a tax in order to keep the portfolio in balance and accomplish the goal that you're looking for.
Well, it's interesting. So, we're going to transition a little bit. You were talking about more on the equity side. Now we're going to talk about something a little bit more volatile and unpredictable. And Michael, I'm going to really frame this question for you. With heightened interest and more volatile instruments such as cryptocurrency and NFTs, how much more risk tolerance have you seen among your clients for these type of investment vehicles? And how does this create more opportunity and challenge for the industry?
And so we haven't received a lot of inquiries around NFTs or non-fungible tokens, but we do get a lot of questions surrounding Bitcoin, particularly when it's doing very well. And some of our clients have made small investments into cryptos over the past couple of years, but you're right, Lisa, cryptocurrencies can be a very volatile asset class and at times a very unpredictable asset class. And to give you some context, since 2019, there have been 13 different episodes where Bitcoin has corrected or sold off by more than 20%. And in contrast, the S&P 500 has had only one such instance, which was obviously in February and March of 2020. So I think from an investment standpoint, this poses both challenges and opportunities. I think probably one of the biggest challenges is really ensuring that investors are educated before making an investment decision and then allocating their portfolios in an appropriate way based on their risk tolerance. So for example, for most investors who want to own crypto, it really should probably be a very small portion of their overall asset base. But secondly, I think it could create opportunities as there may be a few currencies or blockchain technologies that really come to dominate this space. The problem is trying to determine which 1, 2, or 3 will be at the forefront 10 years down the line is very hard to do, especially since there are now more than 10,000 cryptocurrencies currently in existence. As a corollary, I think, to the stock market, right? Who would have thought that back in the year 2000, it would be an online bookseller that would come to emerge from the dot-com bubble and become one of the biggest companies in the world? It's obviously Amazon, but you could have invested in Pets.com, Webvan, Palm Pilots, and essentially watched your money evaporate. So I think there are definitely a lot of uncertainties in the crypto space, but there are also potential opportunities for those willing to take on quite a bit of risk, and understanding your risk tolerance, I think, is imperative if you want to get involved in that space.
I would agree. And you know what? So let's do this. We have a little bit of time left. Let's now talk about the future. And this question is really for any of our panelists. In what ways do you think that financial education landscape needs to change moving forward for Americans of all backgrounds to be confident about building a more stable financial future?
Lisa, it has to happen in our schools. It has to happen at a very young age. The financial literacy is never taught, not even in college. And we have to make this a foundation of our educational system. What we tend to forget is that before 1980, there really wasn't too much of a need. People went to work for a company, they worked there for 40 years, they got a pension. You know, the credit card industry wasn't what it is today. And that's all changed. And all of the responsibility now falls on the individual. So we have to really get this into our school systems.
I couldn't agree more with that comment. I think, just piggybacking off what Carrie said, I think teaching the importance of saving and investing from an early age, no matter how much you're actually putting away, really can't be overstated. There is no greater benefit in finance than the power of compounding. So if I were teaching the basics to an early investor, I would start there. And then kind of transitioning to today's environment, I think the other area that might need to be prioritized would be education away from sort of instant gratification, as we live in a society where it's so easy to see either your peers or a cohort of random people kind of flaunting how much money they've made in this investment or that. And I think that is incredibly unhealthy and can be very dangerous for those individuals who are actually looking to grow their wealth over time.
I'll take it a step further, because I think part of it starts at home. You know, I've got 2 kids that are relatively young that have an interest in what mom and dad are doing. And it doesn't matter if we're, you know, washing dishes or going through a 401k. That is a helpful learning discussion for those kids to talk about what money's spent on, how are we doing it? And again, I can hit them over the head with it every day if it's in the house or once a week or how often we look at it. And it's going to support, you know, what's going on at schools or what we're doing kind of outside of that. But, you know, that's what we lean on. And, you know, especially at Westbanco, especially in the trust department, is, you know, have the discussions with your kids, bring them in. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's talk about money and not just kind of keep it hidden away, you know, like we are in COVID on Zoom calls, hiding in the basement. So
and they really have hit younger individuals when you think about financial education. There's tools and things that weren't available when we were children, right? There's credit cards. You've got fintechs that are very, very much a part of this world. And so I do think, kind of coupling with the education piece that we heard earlier, we are going to see that integrated far more, not just at a college level, but certainly at the more junior level.
Agreed.
I want to make sure I had some more questions, but we've got some really great questions from our audience. So I would like to at least take one question for our audience, and really it's for any of our panelists. And a lot of great commentary about the current financial landscape. When will the market correct itself?
I'll let my colleagues take that question.
Well, and I think we've been treated to a little bit less volatility than we've seen historically, right? So we think about last year, the largest decline, and I think Michael kind of touched on it, was about a down 5% in the S&P 500 historically. On average, once a year, we see about a 13 to 14% correction in the S&P 500. Once a year, we probably see, or once every 18 months, about a 20% correction. And typically that's what we view a correction at about 20%. It really ramps up in midterm elections for whatever reason. I think we all know what that reason is, but it really ramps up the volatility and potential downclines or downturns. But when we think about a recession, we think about, it's probably going to at least be a year or two away from where we're at today, given a lot of the stimulus money that's been floating around, given that the strong demand, given that a labor market that's, pretty fully employed at this point. We just don't see one, at any time soon. But a correction, yeah, you're probably due for one that's reasonable.
But that's okay. That's what we tell our clients. To your point, Scott, that happens so frequently in the markets. Once every year, you usually get at least a 10 to 12% pullback. That I think investors over the past few years, outside of February and March of 2020, you've kind of forgotten about that or been kind of lulled by the fact that the markets have done so well. But year over year, the markets are up, I think, about more than 70% of the time on a year over year basis. So if you just have a longer time horizon and can withstand some of those downward moves in the markets, which happen very, very frequently, you're gonna mitigate some of that volatility, and you're not gonna be succumb yourself to trying to time the market, which I've been doing this for a long time. It's a futile experience trying to do that.
Right. That's right. So I'm going to close on a really positive note. What excites everyone on the panel about Pittsburgh's financial future and the potential? And why is this city poised to grow even larger as a hub for financial services?
Well, I'm so excited about the prospects for Pittsburgh, for everything that we've talked about for the last 2 hours in terms of innovation and new technologies. And the financial services industry benefits from a strong economy. And what we can do to support our community and bring in new workers and, have a place where we all live, work, and play. We are direct beneficiaries of that in this industry.
Michael and Scott, any closing words?
Sure. I think we're uniquely positioned to grow in that area because I think Scott mentioned this earlier. We have a kind of a commitment from many longstanding financial institutions in the area that continue to promote the city, which is great. And as Carrie just talked about, we have really an incredible diverse and tech-oriented workforce, really from all the universities and related businesses in the area. And also Pittsburgh has a very strong values-based work ethic that creates really kind of a community of mutual respect and trust. And I don't really think many cities can boast all of those traits.
Yeah, agreed. I think that, the city's got a lot to offer. And again, not only from kind of businesses and schooling. I think that there's, we've got a number of high quality education institutions. We talk about innovation. A lot of that's driven from the university. We talked early on about the oil and gas and how we're sitting on one of the largest fields there. We've got a lot to offer, business wise, growth wise. And I think the financial services industry is going to follow along with that as well. Lisa, you kind of touched on early on that there's a number of larger non-traditional Pittsburgh banks coming into the market. And I think that kind of highlights the fact that everyone's trying to get a piece of what Pittsburgh has to offer.
Right. And coupled with strong healthcare, strong education, and a robust green economy, boy, and Pittsburgh is certainly a premier place for all of us to live and work. So I wanted to thank our panelists today, to Michael, Scott, and Carrie. Thank you so much for your time. I had a great opportunity to moderate this panel. I learned a lot, and I really do want to say thank you again. We really appreciate all of your thoughts and your commentary. Thank
If
you.
everyone can just hold for
you.
1 second, we're going to take a quick picture. Smile. Perfect. And Josh Greenberg is on his way.
Thank you, panelists. What a great way to conclude our event. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Josh Greenberg. It's a pleasure to meet all of you, and I am the Executive Director for Invest Pittsburgh, Invest Philadelphia, and Invest South Jersey. And for all of you who I have met, thank you again. It has been a pleasure to work with you to complete our inaugural edition of our annual business report. When I began this report in 2021, I felt at home. It brought me back, and I was able to think about many of the unforgettable memories that I had while I lived in North Oakland and attended the University of Pittsburgh. These amazing leaders who I've met during our journey while putting together this report were all incredibly supportive and excited about the work that we were doing. I am humbled of what we've been able to do and create and accomplish amongst Pittsburgh's business community. Despite everything, like real challenges presented by the pandemic and subsequent variants, this publication has been a real success. We've had an incredible audience today of over 500 registered guests, made up of executives, businessmen, and ladies. And it speaks to not only the necessity of what we do now more than ever, business intelligence, to attract and promote investments to the Pittsburgh region, but also really the character of this business community, to lean in, to rise above, and to be the great city that we all know that it is. Thank you, everybody. Now I'd like to share the answers of today's polls. Which of the following developments are you most excited about? The winner is, at 48%, the terminal modernization program at the Pittsburgh Airport. At 38%, following that up, the F&B Financial Center and the Lower Hill redevelopment. And at 14%, the Esplanade. Aside from increasing revenues and profits, which of the following is a top priority for your organization in 2022? And the winner is, at 41%, increasing diversity and leadership. At 37%, increasing total staff numbers. And at 21%, returning to the office. And lastly, the third poll, as we all know, Pittsburgh is ranked as one of the top 10 cities to be a sports fan. What is your favorite sport? The winner is, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers at 47%, football, 33% at hockey, 10% other, and 9% baseball. Thank you to everybody today who participated in our polls. Again, I'd love to thank our incredible sponsors for really making today possible. Our gold sponsors, Clarion University of Pennsylvania, First Commonwealth Bank, Seton Hill University, Slippery Rock University. Our silver sponsors, Fragasso Financial Advisors, Penn State, Greater Allegheny, Pittsburgh Technical College, West Banco, WGL Energy, and our bronze sponsors, Architectural Innovations, Peoples, and Sherrard, German, and Kelly, PC. Our honored sponsor this year is Mid-Atlantic Eurasia Business Council. Our team will be sharing a link after this conference so that everybody will be able to access our publication digitally, complimentary. And while Pittsburgh may be newly released, we've just begun research on our inaugural editions of Invest Cincinnati, Invest Dallas. Please stay tuned for more information here by registering for our newsletters at capitalanalyticsassociates.com, or you can reach out to me directly at jgreenberg@capitalaa.com. Thank you again for joining us all today, to our panels, our moderators, and our panelists for your insightful words, and our sponsors for supporting all of our great efforts. Thank you all so much, and have a pleasant afternoon.